And we're back, like we never left, for the second episode of the day. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Wednesday afternoon with me here in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So today marks, incredibly, 26 years since the release of certainly one of my favorite films, and a movie that I recently discussed for the series called The Great Movies, but a film which is always worth talking about again and again, in the same way that it is as rewatchable a film as I can think of. That would be John Dahl's 1998 classic, Rounders. Man, I just can't believe it. It was released on September 11th, 1998, not long after Wesley Snipes and Blade. And I want to focus on something a little bit different, though, since I kind of covered the nuts and bolts of the movie in a previous episode. I want to kind of spotlight Matt Damon's performance in particular and what he tries to do and what he's able to. And also, I am a historian, as you know, and in the context of Matt Damon's career, his first big role, I mean, he was in School Ties, but first big role where he really got noticed was Edward Zwick's Courage Under Fire. That's what, according to what I've read, that's what got him Saving Private Ryan. It was that Spielberg really liked him, and he had heard the rumors. Denzel Washington had been so impressed with Damon in their first scene together. Denzel was stunned at how good the kid was. He didn't know him. He must not have seen School Ties. That Denzel actually called cut and asked to confer with the director and said to Edward Zwick something to the effect of, just give me a minute. I wasn't expecting this kid to be this good. So Damon, after Courage Under Fire, in rapid succession, he got The Rainmaker and Saving Private Ryan. Good Will Hunting is different in the sense that he and Ben Affleck wrote that screenplay together, and they were able to shepherd it through the torturous process of getting it made, as it turned out, vis-a-vis Harvey Weinstein. But in this particular case, with this particular movie, Weinstein had it right. Because as crazy as this seems, there was a version of Good Will Hunting, the version that sold for a good amount of money. They went down a road that the movie teases, which is that maybe Will Hunting should work for the CIA and be a James Bond with a 200 IQ. The version of the screenplay of Good Will Hunting that sold was that. It was this, the first act was very similar, and then it gets into this international espionage with a guy with a 200 IQ. That sold. Weinstein felt that the original, what they were trying to do in the first place, which was make a more contained story about a very troubled genius, and not just any old genius, like the smartest man who's ever lived, as Will Hunting is presented. He's incredible at everything, any way related to the intellectual arena. But they got Good Will Hunting made on a lower budget and a lower scale, and it was a movie that I think succeeded as well as it did, to the extent that it did, because they didn't try to go big with it. Because you don't always have to make that movie. Now, I remember listening to the late, great Richard Donner talk about ideas that some people had come up with for Lethal Weapon 3. And one of the ideas, which he liked, but not for Lethal Weapon 3, it had the two cops getting involved in some kind of crazy international shit where there was a nuclear warhead. And as much as Donner thought, well, that could make an exciting movie, that's not the movie that we want to make with Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh. And, Rhiannon, get in a fucking car! It might work, but not for this. This is not what we're doing here. And Good Will Hunting, the original script, before they worked on it, and sold this kind of spy thriller shit, that's the movie they needed to make. That's the movie they did make. So Damon, you think of his performance, what he does in Good Will Hunting, he's very edgy, he has a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas, he's angry, and he's ready to, even with the intellectual gifts, he's ready to fight. He's ready to bust somebody up or get busted up, get sent to the lockup. He doesn't give a shit. He is somebody who is going to squander his gifts or say, well, I don't really deserve it. or I don't care, whatever it might be. In The Rainmaker, what Damon does as Rudy Baylor, I think it's one of his better performances for sure. He's presented as very intelligent, hardworking, decent, non-corruptible, and somebody that will actually moralize an older, super successful attorney, as played very well by Jon Voight in The Rainmaker. And he will get on his high horse and in his way dress this guy down. And we believe that is exactly what this character would do. Really like Damon's performance. I think that film, maybe because it's Coppola, I don't know what people were expecting, but I think The Rainmaker is fantastic. So you think of Damon, think of Courage Under Fire, what he does there, if you're familiar with the film. It's a story about a Desert Storm, hero or not a hero, and Denzel plays a military guy, but at this point kind of a civilian military, who's doing an investigation to see if a certain Air Force flyer, I believe she was, or she could have been Marine, played by Meg Ryan, is worthy of the, I think the Purple Heart. Whatever it is, spoiler alert, she passed in combat, and the question was, did she act in enough of a heroic manner? That's essentially what it is. So Damon plays a shell-shocked, traumatized soldier, and he lost a shit ton of weight. And he's talked about this, you can Google this, that he did not do it the quote-unquote right way. He lost a ton of weight, and not in the most healthy fashion. Not that there is an easy way or a healthy way if you're already skinny to drop an additional 40, but Damon said, I really didn't do it the right way. I fucked up, and I was lucky I didn't permanently impair myself going forward. He wasn't kidding, he was being serious. But he plays that role of Ilario it's such a perfectly calibrated performance, every line reading. And if you see him, it's almost hard to believe it's Matt Damon. That is how skinny he is. And that was something that Spielberg had mentioned. As much as he wanted to work for him, I think I could use him in my World War II film that I'm doing. He said, well, this kid's just too skinny. So, well, no, that's not how he normally looks. Spielberg wasn't aware that he had dropped 30, 40 pounds, whatever the exact amount was. So, traumatized soldier, good old boy attorney with a heart of gold, uncorruptible, 200 IQ, chip on his shoulder, always angry. These are the roles that Damon played heading into Rounders. And what he does as Mike McDermott in Rounders, it's not that he's already doing a greatest hits of his previous work. It's not what he does. This is not Christian Slater presumably rolling out a Jack Nicholson impersonation in Heathers and then using it in the next 5 movies. Now, I always thought that was funny. I got such a kick out of the fact that you close your eyes and Christian Slater sounds like Jack Nicholson. He was doing it on purpose. But Damon in Rounders kind of lightened his hair a little bit or changed it from what he had done and where he was with Good Will Hunting. He gives a quintessential movie star performance in Rounders. And by that, I mean, he already, when that movie went before cameras, he had the confidence of somebody who was about to win an Oscar for screenplay for Good Will Hunting, about to get nominated for Best Actor. And I think that The Rainmaker had landed already and was a hit, and he got a lot of acclaim, holding his own with Mickey Rourke, holding his own with Voight, as I said, and DeVito, who is marvelous in that film. That's just a great movie. Speaking of Danny Glover, he plays a judge. He has a really, really good role in that film. So Damon, in Rounders, is playing the role, although he was still 27, going on 28, I believe. He's playing it with the confidence of a movie star, not a kid who got a couple of breaks and now he's just going to give us his best. And there is a difference, because if you watch Damon in The Rainmaker, he's not giving a movie star performance. And he's not doing it in Good Will Hunting either. But in Rounders, as much as his character of Mike McDermott, and yeah, if you ask me which of his previous characters is this guy the most like, he's the most like Will Hunting. Mike McDermott is presented as really smart, but he's really smart within normal parameters. He is really smart, like 140 IQ. This is not 200 IQ. This guy is very intelligent. He's good at reading people and picking up on social cues. Because he's a poker player. But the thing that this movie has in common, and what makes it fun to compare the performance of Damon as Will Hunting or as Mike McDermott, is what I just said, and you know this if you've seen Good Will Hunting, that the character has all the talent, all of the intellectual capacity. He could make huge money doing any number of things. It's not like he has to kind of shoehorn one way or another. He has so many different things that he is phenomenal at. There are so many different areas of academia that he has memorized. He could do anything. But he doesn't, it's not that he doesn't appreciate his gifts, but he is so damaged, he's so traumatized that he's convinced himself he's only good enough to work as a janitor and fuck around on the side and show off how smart he is when it suits him, but to not actualize his potential. And it takes Ben Affleck's Chucky to get him to understand it's not for you. It's not for you. You don't need to make more of yourself for yourself. You need to make more of yourself for people like me who are in your life, who want to be in your life, but also would trade the rest of our lives for 1 week with what you've got. Anybody would kill for it. To be that fucking smart, to be that fucking smart, to be that good at so many different things. And that is a major point of the growth of the character of Will Hunting. Now, you can argue that Mike McDermott in Rounders does not take a conventional trajectory. There is not a conventional character arc like what they put forth, not even in The Rainmaker, but in Good Will Hunting. There is an arc to Will Hunting because he kind of ruins the situation with Minnie Driver's character of Skylar, because it's hard not to blame him for it. It's hard to blame him for it because she's amazing. She's super smart. She has money. She's classy. In his mind, yeah, loves getting her clothes off, sure, but he feels he is not worthy of her. So he'll screw the pooch, so to speak. But in the world of the movie Rounders, the movie it's taking a very unusual line, and that's something we say in poker when we're trying to figure out what's this guy up to. He's taking a really strange line in this hand, which would mean that character is representing a hand that it doesn't make sense that he would have based on how he's played it. The line that he's taking in this hand. Well, he bet the 3, and then another 3 landed, and he didn't bet it. And now an 8 comes out and he puts in a big bet. This is a very weird line to take. Well, what the movie Rounders does, and I think it's fantastic because it doesn't do what we expect. The typical movie of this sort, where you have somebody who has enormous natural talent in one area and wants to do that, but he also has a potential profession, the law, which would be, you hate to say, the safer route, but at least if you're a lawyer, and there's nothing to indicate that if he did not get sidetracked playing poker, that he wouldn't be able to become a pretty good attorney, and those skills that he has cultivated at poker help, as we see in a famous scene where he sits down with a bunch of, the most brilliant legal minds in New York State, and basically calls everybody's hand out, because as much as these guys are brilliant legal minds, in this place there's not one real card player. The film has us rooting for him to quit law school and follow his real passion, which is playing poker, more specifically playing in the World Series of Poker and winning the World Series of Poker main event. Now that's completely cockeyed. And I remember watching the movie with my sister. She had never seen it. It's a film that she certainly knew of, and we had talked about it, but she had never seen it. My sister was stunned at the amount of things in the movie that, if you are struggling with any number of components of your life, this film is throwing them all out at you. The phrase that she used is circling the drain. If you're in a legal profession, unless you're breaking attorney-client privilege or breaking the law, or you do something, fuck up and lose your job, you know that if you're a good lawyer, you'll be able to land on your feet even if you get let go. If you're just going all in and you're playing poker full time, I mean, that sounds great. But one of the interesting things with the movie is that Matt Damon, at the beginning of the film, and this is the arc I was talking about, it's the weirdest arc that I can think of. He looked upon it, it's something that, as brutal as it can be, this is fun, and so hasn't had to work in 25 years. He's just been playing poker. But the Edward Norton character is almost, he's not really the eyes of the audience. His character is a complete scumbag. But he says something that Mike McDermott hasn't thought of, and Matt Damon, it hasn't crossed his thought process. This guy, every day that he's out there grinding, whether he's in Atlantic City, whether he's in a home game, whether he's playing at the Chesterfield up on 58th, you don't think that's work? You don't think that he's given it everything he's got there? He's not taking any risks. He's playing tight. He's being safe. He's not looking to make a score. He's just looking to put food on the table and provide for his kids. You don't think that's work? So Mike McDermott essentially has two minds. When he realizes, I'm not going to be a lawyer, he still has the kind of, I hate to say it this way, the delusions of grandeur, of winning the World Series of Poker, of being a name that, well, in the late 1990s, ESPN hadn't really gotten into the World Series of Poker that much. They televised it a little bit, but nothing like what it became in 2003. Rounders helped to spur the new poker boom. And when, I don't know which executive it was at ESPN, I don't remember the name, figured out, hey, if we have like feature tables and we put a camera into the felt while the guys are playing, it doesn't interrupt the game at all. The people at home will be able to see what the players are holding and kind of like play poker along with them. Viewership will go up. Well, that's pretty obvious. That's exactly what happened. The movie Rounders, although it was not an enormous box office hit, it made money. It was not a big budget. But it spurred more interest in the game that is mostly played in this film, Texas Hold'em. I grew up, I played poker my whole life. I did not play Texas Hold'em until after seeing the movie Rounders. And I feel like I'm not the only person who had a similar kind of experience. I mean, my mom's mom, Grandma Gertrude, she was a lounge singer. Gloria Dennis, that was her name. She actually appeared on Arthur Godfrey's radio show in the 50s. She spent decades of her life in clubs, in dusty bars, where she would go up there and sing. She played poker almost every day of her life. Not once did we ever play Hold'em. We just didn't. And we play Omaha either. Those are the two big games now. We never played them until I was well into my 20s. So the idea is that he has these delusions of grandeur, of winning the World Series of Poker, of fulfilling, I guess he thinks this could be his destiny, and still with the big eyes of this is what we're going to do. But at the same time, he understands it's still a fucking job. This is still work. There are going to be days where it's easy and I'm just busting people up. Or as he says, you sit down, or you scout, I sit down, I mop it up. But there are times, because it's cards, it's odds, it's percentages. There are times where you're going to get outmaneuvered, outplayed, and win. And there are going to be times where you get everything right and you still lose. That's baseball, Susan, but that's cards. And any kind of a game of chance, there is the uncertainty that doesn't come with having a steady job, like being a corporate attorney, pulling in $300,000 plus a year plus benefits. So let's say that it would have been $150,000. You understand what I'm saying? But he's willing to take that risk of grinding it out, maybe sitting at a poker table on average 14 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week. But that's him following his bliss. So the movie essentially is telling us, follow your passion. The Martin Landau character, love his character as the Professor Petrovsky, who plays a much bigger role in the movie than we think, even though, Martin Landau, he had won an Oscar a few years earlier. But he basically tells Mike, your calling calls you, not the other way around. This is what you're meant to do. You've got to go for it. And it is unusual, and that was another thing that I hadn't put it through this way. My sister, we were watching the movie, and at the end, when it was over, she loved it. She'll say, this is super entertaining. It was way better than I thought. But when you start to break it down, she said the movie is arguing in favor of compulsive gambling and maybe gambling when your life depends on it, and you would be better off not doing this. No thank you, I'm all set here, I'm going to take a stable job. But there are those moments, and there are those times, and there are those stories that we hear where the stable job, that was the wrong path. And Jim Carrey, he's given a similar speech at a number of commencements over the years, and he's talked about this in various platforms. You can find this on YouTube, where he talked about his father. Jim Carrey said, nobody knows this. My dad was as funny as me, if not funnier. He had, where do you think I got it from? He was a scream. But he felt the right move for him, for his wife, for me, for the family, was to take a stable accounting job. And for a time that was okay. But then when he lost his job and struggled, you say to yourself, maybe you should have chased your dream. Maybe you should have gone for what you really wanted to do and not settled for plan B. And Rounders does skirt that very fine line between promoting crazy risk-taking versus it's okay to have a stable job, especially when you're going to end up a corporate lawyer, you're going to make a lot of money, kid. It's okay. Maybe you could do that and play poker, just not as your primary occupation. I mean, there are some big hitters, the financial industry, like David Einhorn, who almost owned the Mets, and Cliff Josephy, guys that were worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. Guy Laliberté, the guy that did Cirque du Soleil. There are guys that love poker. Bill Perkins, another guy worth $300-400 million. He doesn't make money playing poker. He plays for big stakes. He's had a lot of bad beats. But maybe that's what Mike McDermott should do ultimately. But in the world of the movie, he's got his 3 stacks of high society. He's going to the Vegas and the fucking Mirage, and he's going to take his shot. And Rounders is a movie that, as I said, it did just okay at the box office. It didn't do as well as history would suggest. And I said the same thing about Goodfellas yesterday, where Goodfellas is a movie that is so well remembered, got such incredible, runaway rave reviews, should have won Best Picture and Director. But you look at the numbers, it didn't even gross $50 million worldwide. And I understand that's a staggering sum of money under, normal person standards, and the fact that it's 34 years ago, but it wasn't as big a hit as it should have been. So with the movie Rounders, it turned a profit, but it didn't do as well as you would think, given how much of a beloved film this is. And they've been talking about making a sequel to it since 1999, and I don't see a sequel, do you? So who knows if there will be a sequel. But I remember when Rounders came out, I remember I was outside of the Shore 8, that's a movie theater in Huntington, and oddly enough, I ended up living a block and a half from the Shore 8. At the time I was younger, I was at my dad's elsewhere in Huntington. And I remember a group of people about to buy tickets. I was just in the Village, I was at Stop and Shop, whatever it was, and they were buying tickets, and the guy says, I want to see Rounders, I want to see Rounders. That's the poker movie, that's the poker movie. To just call it the poker movie, I feel like underrating it a little bit, because it gives you a lot more to think about, like the elements, the concepts that I just discussed here. It's not just a poker movie. It's a movie about psychology, the psychology of winning and losing, and promises made, promises not kept, and how far are you supposed to go for people who've done you major solid in the past. When do you ever pay it off? Do you ever pay it off? And how important is it to go for your dreams? Now, I would say if you're in your early to mid-20s, fuck yeah. You give it everything you got. You want to go to Vegas in the fucking Mirage, you take your crack. No problem. Zero judgment here, right? We're the judgment-free zone over here. But I love the movie Rounders. And if you look at Damon's performance in this film and compare it to what he does, as I said, Courage Under Fire and The Rainmaker and Good Will Hunting, and you see what he does here, there's elements of all of the other roles, well, not so much Courage Under Fire, but he is clearly not He's not falling back on any facial tics or anything like that. He's not giving us any movie star moxie. He's just in command of the screen and with the confidence of somebody who knows he's already made it. And he's holding his own with Oscar winner Mark Landau, with Oscar nominee John Malkovich, with fucking home run hitter and John Turturro. They have some fantastic scenes in the film. Michael Rispoli and Oscar nominee and a fucking genius himself, Edward Norton. It's Damon's movie, and he stamps it as his because it's a distinctive performance that you can't look at any other movie starring Matt Damon and say, oh, he just did the same thing. No, he doesn't. And then go ahead the next year, he was nominated for The Talented Mr. Ripley. I don't love that film, but I think he is phenomenal in it. That was Anthony Minghella, who had done The English Patient. What an amazing filmmaker Anthony Minghella is. But Damon, I feel like, is kind of underrated as an actor. He's been around so long. He's made so many great movies, but he sometimes will get lost in the shuffle because he isn't the broadest, most expansive actor and isn't the big guy. He doesn't look like a conventional movie star, a conventional leading man. Oddly enough, his buddy Ben Affleck kind of does, and even he didn't take a conventional career path, and if we're being completely honest, Ben is a better writer and director than he is an actor. I mean, it's what it is. I think he would agree with that. That's not a criticism. He's a phenomenal writer and a great filmmaker. But that's a story for another day. 26 years ago today, John Dahl's amazing poker noir Rounders opened in theaters, inadvertently triggering a new poker boom, which continues to this day, 26 years later. People are still crazy about poker in general and about Texas Hold'em in particular. This has been, believe it or not, the 300th episode of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Wednesday afternoon here with me in New York. If you checked out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.